You ever seen that one? Let us catch up. Let us catch up.
No.
My rounduppers, greetings, class. This is Chris Haskins with therealestateroundup.com, hanging out with Jessica Segal. How you doing?
Hey there. How are you? I'm good. I'm happy. It's Friday afternoon,
We know
almost quitting time. By the time you and I connect at 3:30 on a Friday, I am just so done. My week is crazy. I'm in and out of court. I'm meeting with clients, juggling family, my own rental property. So I got to tell you, by the time we connect, I got no gas left in the tank.
Oh man, darn, that's cool. You give
Yeah,
us what you got.
I do. I love my chats with you guys, and then I head out for the weekend. So it's a nice way to finish up the work week.
Nice. And my mission to raise your financial literacy rounduppers. Jessica is going to bring some information in the attorney world, in the legal world. Jay, what you got for us today?
So this week I ended up being a referee for a foreclosure. So we're not allowed.
You tell
Yeah,
me.
they're in the courthouse, so you're not allowed to videotape it. So I can't record it. But basically, what I do as an attorney, I literally read, the property and the information about the foreclosure. Yep.
How did we
Yeah.
get here? I want to know how we got here. How did we get?
So unfortunately, somebody is not paying their mortgage, and the bank or the mortgage company begins a foreclosure process in the court against them. It's actually a civil action. You actually file a lawsuit. And the homeowner is given many opportunities to try and get current on their back payments before the bank will actually ask the court to force the sale of the home. Mm-hmm. So I've appeared many times on behalf of the bank where the bank is saying, sure, we'll give you more time. You have to make some payments. You have to show what your financial hardship is. You have to fill out documents to show why you're not paying. Mm-hmm. But if you really can't pay, or maybe you don't even want to pay anymore at this point, and you've abandoned the property, the bank is going to ask the judge to force a sale of the property. And so then I can appear as a referee, totally separate, unrelated to appearing for the bank. So sometimes I appear for the bank, and then other times the court will appoint me as a referee to actually sell the house. So I go to the courthouse and I basically auction the property off.
That's not a referee, that's a trustee sale.
So in New York, they're called referees.
I thought you tried to negotiate for you. I mean, how did we get from being a referee to auctioning off that? I mean,
so in New York, the attorney who auctions off the property is called a referee. That's the name of the person in New York. So I go to the courthouse with basically the terms of the foreclosure sale. Mm-hmm. Someone from the bank will show up. And so if nobody bids on the property, the bank will buy it back.
But hold up, Jay, where do we get from negotiating with the seller, with the homeowner first? Is that the homeowner's responsibility, or is that you? Are you involved in that too?
So if I'm hired by the bank as an attorney for the bank, I can negotiate directly with that homeowner to see if we can work out a payment plan.
I like that.
Which happens a lot. They are given time. Sometimes they'll renegotiate the interest rate. Sometimes they'll renegotiate, the terms and the payment structure. The banks really do try to work with the homeowners,
I see.
But when it doesn't work out and the property has to be sold, now the court orders the sale of the property.
Gotcha.
When the court orders the sale of the property, they assign an independent attorney to act as what's called referee. In New York, they call it a referee. Gotcha. That attorney doesn't represent the bank, doesn't represent the homeowner. They just are selling the property.
They're facilitating the sale.
Yes. Yes. So if somebody bids on the property and they are successful, then I, as that attorney referee, would actually conduct the closing for the bank and get it closed out.
Gotcha.
If nobody buys it, if nobody's there to make a bid, which happens often,
All the
where
time.
nobody wants the property or it's too high of a bidding price, the
Mm-hmm.
bank will buy it back. And when that happens, it's pretty easy for me. The bank buys it back and I'm done. And that's it. If somebody actually purchases the property at that foreclosure, then I help facilitate them getting the new deed and actually closing on the property.
But that's fun.
And yeah, and you have to come to the auction with 10% of the purchase price in a bank check. Okay. Yeah, right. And then it's great because you typically see the same experienced wholesalers there. People, they know the deal, they know what to buy, they have a list of buyers, so and they'll just get their wholesale fee. So I tend to know a lot. I do a referee work, so I tend to know who the typical buyers are. And you get familiar with everybody's faces at the courthouse. Yeah. So I got to do that this weekend. It's interesting. So far, I've done it a handful of times. Nobody's ever purchased. The bank has always bought it back, which is pretty easy for me. But I have a lot of attorney friends who end up having to do the closing and prepare the documents and all that.
Before we get I want to get to Jay. I have so much to ask you. I want to talk about, before we move to the documents, help my audience understand that is a sale. That is considered a sale. I want them to understand this, frame that for them so they can comprehend that.
Yes. So this is a legitimate sale. You're buying this property. The catch is you're typically buying it sight unseen. I'll say this. The sales are advertised and they're published in the newspaper. They're usually on your county clerk's website. So you can drive by and see what they look like. You can look up the addresses. You could look up the tax information on the property. You can look up whatever history is online for that property, but you often cannot get inside. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a pretty good understanding of property values in that area and what the condition of the house is. But when you make a bid and you're successful, you have just bought that property. Okay. And you are required legally to close on that property typically it's going to be 30 days.
30 days there. It's 2 weeks here.
Typically 30 days. But, I'll say this, many times the bank will give people some flexibility there if they're trying to arrange for financing or other things. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you're going to want to ultimately do your title search and all of that, if you're going to keep it or if you're going to flip it. And then there's all kinds of issues that sometimes come up if the title's not clean or whatever. But you're going to get a deed to the property, and you're going to be able to record that deed in the clerk's office, and then you own it.
We're the new owners. I'm getting insurance that day, Jessica. When I'm winning the bid, I'm getting insurance that day. But Jessica, further help my viewers understand when the bank buys it back.
Yes.
When they buy it back, give us that picture. Is that a sale or is that considered? I mean, because some people look up costs. Go ahead.
Right. So the bank basically will say, listen, I want to dump this property, but I have a minimum amount I'm willing to dump it for. Right. So if somebody doesn't purchase at that minimum amount, they're going to buy it back. And that's what's called REO. If you've ever seen that listed, real estate owned. And what that means is the bank owns it. Once the bank owns it, it's a headache for them because they have to make sure the lawn is mowed and that the property is safe and there's no hazards and they're up to code in the town. So what they do is they typically then list those properties for sale. Okay. So if you didn't win the auction at the courthouse, you still have the opportunity to get it at a discount. Usually you need a broker who has a connection or somebody who's got access to the bank-owned property listings.
Yep.
Yeah. And I bought a short sale that way for myself. It was, basically what happens is even like companies like Zillow will list pre-foreclosures or foreclosures or bank-owned properties. So they're pretty mainstream now. It used to be that you had to have like a connection, somebody to give you this list, but now anybody really can get a hold of it, and having a connection with wholesalers that are regularly at the courthouse helps too. Get on their list as a buyer.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So that's basically the process.
So the bank, the bank is buying the property back. Man, or something. Let me get my pad. So what if we win it, Jessica? Does it just for my audience? I know we go over this all the time. How do they get the key, Jessica, to get into the house after we buy it at the steps?
Well, I'm going to say every place is different. Okay. Typically, what's going to happen is you're going to show up and change the locks that day with a locksmith. I mean, there's very often not going to be somebody with a key. Have you ever had that experience?
Well, I take my clients with me one time. Then I'm driving home one time, and the guy asked me, "Well, Chris, where are we going to go to get the key?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ain't no key, dog.
Yeah.
Ain't no
Yeah.
key.
You typically, right. It's your property now. So you're typically going to try and gain access somehow.
Gain
Most of
access."
the
I
time,
like that.
you're going to bring a locksmith with you to change the locks for you. But you're also getting whatever deed the property had at that time. Okay. So if there wasn't clear title, when it's conveyed to you from the bank, you may want to bring what's called quiet title action. We've talked about this before, where you bring an action in the court to basically clear up any deficiencies in the title, any judgments against it, any liens against it, things like that. You're buying the property at auction subject to whatever problems there are with the title.
Yeah. So we've been on here 10 minutes. I know I got you for 15 minutes, Jay. For people that have never been to the auction, and we did a video, guys. If you want to go back through my videos, they have this misconception that it's a guy. The starting bid is like 10 grand. Then they're going to bid it up. People think that the bid gets bidded up at foreclosure auctions. Jessica, share some light on that.
No, so for example, so the bank is going to have their minimum, and so for example, the house that let's say hypothetically the house is worth 300. Okay, the bank will not accept anything lower than 150,000. This was this particular sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't, they'll tell you to start the bidding, 150. The representative from the bank tells the people there at the auction, this is the starting bid. So the bank decides what the starting bid is. If people don't pay it or bid at that, it goes back to the bank. If somebody bids $151,
that's me.
Then they get it, right?
Dollar
so, right, exactly. But what happens is there are occasions where it's a great deal and you have multiple people bidding in $100 increments or sometimes even $5,000 increments if they really want the property. Mm-hmm. While I was there was another attorney auctioning off a property that was like a condo, and the condos were worth about $100,000. But for some reason, the minimum bid was $400,000 by the bank. $400,000. So there must have been multiple mortgages and liens, and there must have been something going on with that property. But there was several people that were interested, and nobody put up that bid, and it just went back to the bank. Yeah, it definitely seemed bizarre.
Yeah, that is bizarre. Wow.
But most of the time, it's reasonable. So most of the time, the condo is worth 100, and the opening bid is 45,000. Or 40,000 or something. Most of the time, you're getting a good deal. That's why they're doing it.
Is it regulated? To me, I just have no clue in my mind. I'm like, if I'm the bank, if I'm the lender, I can open up whatever bid I want. Who's going to tell me what my opening bid is going to be?
Right.
Is it regulated at all?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I've never been I've never been part of that side of things to know. I don't know if the court sets it when they're doing the foreclosure action. I actually don't know.
Good question though, right?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Yeah. I'll see if I can find out the answer to that.
Because I'm like, if I lend you $2 grand, right, and then I want to foreclosure on you, my opening bid, I could start it at 50.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I
All right.
found out about that. So that was part of my interest, one of my interesting things this week. And then on a personal level, I'm trying to get my own 2-family like rented, and it's just been taking so much of my time. I don't use a property management company, just me personally. I really like to be hands-on with my property.
Yeah.
So, I have this tenant from hell that we've been talking about, and she finally agrees to move out. So I didn't have to do the eviction. But then it's like the day I'm supposed to get the keys, it's like, I just need 2 more days.
When was
And what am
this?
I going to do? So this is going on this week. And it's
Like
like,
right
okay, well, so
now.
I did file I'll say this though, I did file all the required forms so I can go forward with the eviction.
So we're
But yeah,
concurrently.
so, right. So if she doesn't move out by Sunday, well, then I have a court date. So she'll be evicted either way. But it's like they just take advantage,
Yeah, they
and
do.
they really do. So I'm like, okay, so you're basically just stealing at this point from me because you're
Shoot.
enjoying your hot water and your heat, and you haven't paid me a dime, and you owe me, back rent, and you're being evicted, you know. But what I did want to point out, a great tip that I learned that I never knew about in starting the eviction process. It was really important to me that I started the eviction process before she moved out, because I knew once she was out, I'd never be able to find her to try and get a judgment. That's it. She's not giving me her forwarding address. I can assure you of that. So apparently, if your tenant leaves and gets mail. Now it's a federal offense. Don't ever tamper with somebody's mail. Don't ever take somebody's mail. Don't ever do anything. Don't open somebody else's mail. But there's 2 things you could do. If you write return to sender and leave it for the postman to pick up, the post office will notify you of the person's forwarding address, which I didn't know, if they forwarded their mail with the postal service. And you can also do a subpoena to the postal service. An attorney would have to do that, but you could do a subpoena for their forwarding address information.
Wow.
So there are ways. Yeah, I mean, most real estate investors know about skip tracing, and you try and track somebody down, or you can hire a private investigator, whatever. But this is something that, I guess attorneys, I don't really do evictions, but so my attorney friends had said to me, these are ways that you can track down your tenant for summary proceedings for a small claims action or an eviction, the return to sender option, and also just a subpoena on the postal service for address information.
Subpoena. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Gotta answer them joints. I love it. Like you have to
Yeah.
answer. Don't you go to jail if you
So
don't answer
this
this
was,
stuff?
you could,
All right.
but it has to be a legitimate subpoena. So
Yeah.
the other interesting thing is that I learned, we have a change in New York to landlord tenant screening. It's the Tenant Protection Act of 2019, and I've mentioned this with you before. It's a nightmare
Yeah.
for landlords, but they've really changed how you can screen people. And so I'm now screening tenants for this apartment, and I don't accept pets. Personally, I just don't want to deal with pets. And so I had just put in brand new carpet, and I really didn't want to do pets. But if somebody has a service animal, a legitimate certified service animal, or a support animal, you have to, and they're otherwise qualified, you have to accept that service animal. You cannot just say, I don't take pets. So that's definitely, it was important for me to know, to make sure that I follow the law. And it's also, improper to ask about whether or not someone is a citizen. And it's actually improper to ask somebody what they do for a living. I mean, I used to, just be very conversational, and now I'm just so careful about what I ask people. I'm basically just asking what's your monthly income, what's your annual income, and pay stubs. And so when I look at somebody's pay stubs, then obviously I could see what they do for a living or whatever. You get a kind of a sense, but they're really, you have to be just very careful that you're not discriminating in any way about, race, religion, what they do for a living, or what their source of the rent is. It's irrelevant who's actually going to pay the rent, where it comes from, meaning like a
It's
program of
crazy.
some kind. Yeah. So this particular time around has been very different for me for screening tenants. And the eviction, the pay or quit notice has gone from 3 days to 14 days.
Yeah, that's
So
in
I'm
trouble.
really I've had a vacancy for over a month.
Mm,
I'm just really careful about my screening, and I'm not in a rush to just put any tenant in there. I really have to do my due diligence because it could be catastrophic for me. Another mom and pop tenant, landlords who rely on the rent to pay the mortgage and the utilities and things like that.
Are you held to a higher standard being an attorney? And do you have to let people know I'm an attorney when you're interfacing
I
with them?
don't, I don't have to let them know, and legally, I'm not held to a higher standard. But I'm sure that a judge would look at me differently and expect me to know certain things.
Yeah.
So, if I had to handle an eviction, I would probably ask one of my attorney friends who does evictions to go, because there really are so many rules and little loopholes that I'm
Yeah.
not even
Oh,
aware of, because I don't really do landlord tenant work
yeah.
because it's just doesn't fit into my schedule. Oftentimes the courts meet at night and things like that. So I want to be home with my kids in the evening. But I
Mhm.
highly recommend, if you do have to do an eviction, you just spend the money and let an attorney do it for you who specializes in evictions, because
Especially up there.
yeah, it's just there's so many rules to be aware of.
I'm just like, what if the tenant is a dope boy, or if they're running a strip joint, or if they're running illegal gambling? I mean, you can't ask them what they're doing. Not, I mean, what are you coming with the money? I
Right.
don't know.
But my lease, of course, says, and I hope everybody's does, is that, you can't run a business out of the apartment. You can't conduct any illegal activity out of the apartment, things like that. So if
But
somebody was doing that, then I could bring them to court to get an eviction,
but you don't
to,
want to
to
do that.
terminate the lease. Yeah.
And you can't even ask. Can you even ask the previous landlord? Can you do that? Tell me about doing background checks and talking to the current landlord or previous landlord. Is that protected too?
No. So you can always ask to speak to their prior landlord,
Gotcha.
for sure. But realistically, I know so many landlords who get burned because they just want this person out. So they don't oftentimes want to be honest, because
True.
they're just dying to get this person out of their
That's
apartment.
true. That is true.
Um, or the number that you're given is not actually the landlord. So you always want to check the county clerk ownership records before you
Oh, yeah.
call,
They do that all
to
the time.
see. Yeah. So you have to be
I got
careful.
some
But
problem with
so
that. I bust you.
I mean, I'm just like you guys. I mean, I work all day. I try and run my rental properties in my free time and on the weekends. And like Sunday, I'll be showing the house to prospective tenants. I like that FaceTime. I want to meet them. I want to see and interact with them.
Even though
Um,
you can't ask them
so
nothing. That's terrible.
yeah, so
All right. Well,
so
Jay, I
hopefully I
mean,
get it rented quick.
yeah, that'd be cool. We'll keep following up with that then.
Yes. So
Okay.
have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And as always, if you guys have a topic you want me to cover, just let us know.
It's a few here. Somebody wanted to talk about ringless voice messages. Do you have any data? Not now, but maybe I could go over these questions with you later. Some
I've
questions that
never
came.
heard of that. I don't even know what that is. Ringless voicemail.
Yeah, well, we'll go. I don't want to hold your time up. We can
Yeah. No.
we'll talk about that stuff. Okay.
All right. Well, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jay.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Rounduppers, Jessica only has a few minutes. She's so busy. I'm so thankful and honored that she even takes the time to come on here. And actually, the video that's coming out tomorrow, we did an interview. Wait till you see this video. These people, let me show you. Don't move. Hey, babe. I got to clear our movie tickets. So, from time to time, people, or a lot of times, people hire me to be their trustees on their land trust, right? So they send me all these docs. I get trust deeds. I get the deed. I get the deed of trust if they're borrowing money. These particular people, I think they're in Arkansas and California. Sweetest lady you ever want to meet. If you're watching, hey. So, but I do this all the time, right? I get deeds. I'm the trustee. Why? Because I have integrity and I do it all the time. And I'm not going to sell your house without your permission. But recently I got one of these packets in the mail and the deed was all messed up. And this one actually has a problem too we have to fix. but they got me signed. They had they had me on the deed incorrectly. So tomorrow I did a full training to show you what to look out for when you're doing your deeds on your land trust. You better make sure you do this correctly. If you sign those deeds wrong or incorrectly, and Jessica, I did a full interview with Jay. If you sign them wrong, you could be personally liable for that trust and that deed. So I want to make sure you get this down, Roundup family. Got to get this stuff down. Okay, make sure you subscribe to my channel below. Please hit the like button and hit that bell so you know when we're going live. And Monday, already got a special guest for you. I think it's going to be Matt. We actually are going to be doing a live training in Nashville this coming December. So Matt is going to be on. The man bought 200 houses his first year in real estate, and he's flipping houses he's got a bunch of Airbnbs, and he will actually walk you through. He'll get your first deal. I can't wait for him to talk about that on Monday. It's going to be cool. Okay, my rounduppers. I'll see you Monday for Monday Masters, 2:00. And if you're interested in investing with us, send me a direct message to chrishaskins.com. Or if you want to sell me a house, we buy houses, obviously full time. But I've opened up my business to private investors. We pay a high rate of return if you want to come in on some of our projects. I love you, Roundup. I'll talk to you soon. Chris Haskins, over and out. Peace. Oh, I guess we got some questions. What happens at the... Hold up. Y'all got questions for an attorney. I can't be asking these questions. Yeah, that was attorney question. Auction. Attorney. Yeah, that's attorney stuff. All right. I'll see y'all later. Peace.